I don't know how many years on this earth I got left. I'm gonna get real weird with it.
Hello my darlings, and welcome to a Get Real Weird With It vlog where I read weird books or books that are just not in the mainstream and not talked about. So let's get straight into it. I read House of Madelaine by Elaine Kraf. In this book, our main character Elaine agrees to enter a weird house to emotionally support her friend Florence. Incredibly absurd, uncomfortable, nonsensical shit ensues. The house immediately refuses to let her leave. It introduces a rotating cast of fucked up authority figures and appoints a shadowy femme puppet master named Madeleine to micromanage Elaine's moral collapse. Elaine is then forced to perform increasingly ominous tasks, think home improvement, but make it evil, while slowly remembering her deeply unsettling, upsetting marriage to a gynecologist rapist husband who abused her. Every room is a metaphor. Every interaction is a trap, and nothing makes sense. Whilst Elaine tries to reclaim her autonomy, the house is just a surreal psychological funhouse built by trauma. It is a maximalist fever dream. It's about how the real monster is power, especially the kind disguised as care, authority, or love. The writing is very fractured, it's kind of poetic, it's intentionally destabilizing. The plot is very hard to discern, and the doubling of the author slash protagonist, they both have the same name, creates this very hall of mirrors effect. This book, reading it, made me feel like I'd just been given a cocktail of drugs and then thrown into a horror hall of mirrors whilst a Yorgos Lanthimos soundtrack plays full blast as many unseen hands grope me. The main themes in this were loss of agency, power, control, and coercion, sexual trauma and memory, and the self as both victim and participant. This is a book. There were scenes of her, some of her jobs being to hold on to or to clutch ostrich feathers with her sphincter. There was a lot of on-page marital grape, so much essay, and it was just very disturbing, confusing dream logic. I don't think I am the reader for Kraf. This is my second book of hers, and it's much the same style. It's not for me, but I would say this probably might be for readers who love very surreal, claustrophobic, unreliable realities, and who enjoy psychological horror without the jump scares. Also for readers who don't need answers spoon-fed to them and are very comfortable sitting in ambiguity and discomfort. I personally gave this a 2 stars. Similar books that I preferred were maybe The Yellow Wallpaper, but like I said, Princess of 72nd Street, similar vein. This one was more effed up though. Then I read Mother Eating by Jess Hagemann, which I purchased. This was advertised as a Marie Antoinette retelling. In this one, we have Reza Hasberg, who is an ice-cold stage mum with monarch delusions, who sells her 14-year-old daughter, Mary Tony, to a pseudo-religious, punishment-obsessed sex cult whose leader believes she is the ultimate mother and vessel to usher his children into the world. The first chapter of this contained quite extreme cult sexual violence. It was really vile and so think Hellraiser stuff, but harder to stomach. And then I will let you know before I go on, there are triggers up the wazoo with this one. So many triggers. With this book, you get POVs from fucking everybody except Marie or Marie Tony. They are all written like witness statements. So this has a very documentary style format to it. For me, all of the POVs had no distinct personality. They all sounded like the same character. There was a lot of religious scripture quoted in this because the cult is also pseudo, Christian religion, but there was also insane medieval type torture, especially sexual torture. It's insidious and it is gory. This was not for me. I gave this 1.5 stars. I particularly dislike the fact that we did not get Marie Tony's point of view. I don't really see, look, I can see how it's like Marie Antoinette, but yeah, it just wasn't the story I was hoping to get with that reference. I think you'll like it if you like very uncomfortable on purpose fiction. Maybe if you liked being disturbed by Lapvona, boy parts, or earthlings, then this could be in that lineage. It's religious horror without reverence. So like I said, if you love pseudo-religions, cult dynamics, ritualized punishment, and true crime where you don't have likable characters, this could be for you. I then read Weird Fucks by Lynne Tillman, which I purchased. In this one, a young woman wanders through the 1970s New York and adjacent terrain, collecting one-night stands, half relationships, awkward conversations, and a mass of married peen like their anthropological specimens. She doesn't fall in love. She doesn't try to fall in love. She catalogues and she bounces from married dick to average mediocre married dick with little fanfare or description. The main themes in this were desire without romance, emotional detachment, and women as observers rather than confessional subjects. Each sexual encounter in this is a vignette. It's just a steady accumulation of very briefly mentioned sex. Lynne Tillman writes with a very detached and faintly amused style. This is not a sexy book. It felt very cold, repetitive, and just really, really dispassionate. With this title and this image, I went into this expecting fucking weird sex, okay? Really juicy shit, but this was just so dry and anticlimactic. The sex itself in this, I wouldn't call it weird. And it is barely described. It is not described at all. What you get is, I met John. John has a wife. His wife is not here. I move in with John. We have sex. His wife returns. I meet Robert. Rinse and repeat. To be honest, the only weird thing about this book is just how sparse and dull these stories are. I think I gave this a 3 stars. Like, it was fine, but not what I was hoping to get with a book called Weird Fucks and a titty on the cover. I think maybe people that would like it are those people who love really cold, simple prose. And for readers who are tired of sex being framed as romantic or redemptive and just prefer it mentioned very clinically and briefly. And then I read How I Killed the Universal Man by Thomas Kendall. I was sent this by the author. So in this book, you have a deeply exhausted noir journalist with a drinking problem who gets sent to cover a miracle antidepressant drug trial. So this is a guided response drug called Numenon, which is a biotech-laced psychedelic that is 50 times stronger than DMT. And whilst investigating this, they accidentally stumble into biotech psychedelics stronger than God, a plant-based internet fixing climate change, neural interfaces, i.e. skin plants, that connect people directly to the Ethernet, body mods, VR orgies, and just so much more. And then as Hagemann experiments with the drugs and sinks deeper into augmented reality, the boundary between reporting and participation, observation and manipulation, inner consciousness and external systems begin to collapse. Instead of a tidy expose, he gets an existential crisis, a philosophical hangover, and a front row seat to the collapse/reformatting of reality. He confronts whether becoming better via technology means becoming less human. How I Killed the Universal Man is what happens when cyberpunk grows up and gets clinically depressed. It is a very dense, heady, aggressively intelligent, transhumanist science fiction book that trusts the reader to keep up or at least drown, interestingly, along the way. The tech mentioned in it is imaginative but plausible, and the world building is so immersive it borders on intrusive, which I think is on purpose. The main character, John Hagemann, is a classic noir protagonist. He's cynical, chemically compromised, morally exhausted. This is not a comfort read. The narrative felt like a game where each insight felt like unlocking a new cognitive level. It was a brain rewrite reading this. There are no tidy answers in this. I think it is quite ambiguous in terms of how it ends. It was, for me, a super challenging read. The sentences felt stacked, and it's like I had to pick them apart to pass their meaning. I'll give you an example of just a very simple sentence, so nothing to do with the very complex, world-building, futuristic, tech, philosophical, drug-induced ideas in this. Forget that. Just something very simple. Like, for instance, a doctor emerges from the doorway and stands behind the desk, changing the texture of the room. She begins to talk, and the sound of manipulated air drops below a roar. So what that is talking about is that the aircon is on. So it's just, yeah, it's simply telling you the air conditioner is on, but for some reason, the sound of manipulated air dropping below a roar, it just took me a minute to understand what it was referencing. And that's how I felt throughout the whole book. I will preface, I'm going through the worst brain fog of my life. And it's not just making reading difficult, it's just making life difficult for me. So that could come into play here, but most of this book did go over my head. I was just constantly thinking, what is real? What is real? What is real? What is real? I think this book is definitely for people who like complex writing, who love sinking their teeth into meaty sentences and ideas and taking chunks of them and just sitting there and masticating on it. Those people will be fed with this book. It's very philosophical and experimental fiction about tech, AI, and post-human futures. Super cerebral cyberpunk with ideas, heavy drug-like trippiness. I think similar things to this, I would probably, like I said, I think this was too intelligent for me. The only things I can think of would be Neuromancer. For some reason, Johnny Mnemonic comes to mind, and Black Mirror in general. But if anything I said interests you, check it out and grab yourself a Negroni while you read it. So let me sum up all the books I read in this reading vlog. So we had House of Madelaine by Elaine, a surreal psychological novel where a woman trapped in a hostile house must confront trauma, power, and her own capacity for harm to reclaim herself. Mother Eating by Jess Hagemann, a savage novel about motherhood, sex cults, and every trigger warning imaginable. Weird Fucks by Lynne Tillman, a cool catalogue of sex, masculinity, and quiet power plays that treats desire like a strange animal under glass. And How I Killed the Universal Man by Thomas Kendall, a transhumanist noir about depression, biotech, and the terrifying realization that tech didn't steal meaning, we outsourced it. So those were all the books that I read for this Get Real Weird With It blog. Let me down below. Look, I am going to change my diet, my lifestyle, try and figure out this brain fog thing, because like I said, it's starting to really mentally handicap me in my everyday life, and I am struggling a lot, and it's got to the point where I can no longer ignore it and hope it goes away on its own. So I either figure it out myself, or I'm going to have to go to the doctor and be a pincushion and run some tests, because it's scaring me a little bit with how incapacitated and diminished I am mentally right now. There is nothing scarier for me than losing my cognitive abilities, having witnessed multiple grandparents pass from dementia and psychosis related illness. So bear with me while I am going through this. But as I was saying, let me know down below a weird book you read recently, whether you think you would ever participate in neural implants, or just leave me a cocktail or alcohol drink emoji in honor of How I Killed the Universal Man. And until next time, stay a weird, star child.
We are the weirdos, mister.